Dugan's made this beautiful phrase, the the liberal ambiance. So what's the ambience in which we're now speaking, besides from what's visible and audible in the offing? There's a full harvest moon, which is, so we could ask the question, is the harvest moon um, weeping its silvery tears as much over Kiev as over Moscow? Um, and we could also ask, is Dugin in seemingly not setting his face against liberalism in the full sense, because he's allowing for this so-called paleo-liberalism of the Englishman, of Nick Land, committing some kind of horrible, unrecoverable error. So, but let me mention something that so I'm just going to kind of try to cover the first 49 minutes. The discussion is so compact and so dense that it's really, so far as I can see, equivalent to a proper dialogic discussion. It's not merely a conversation. It's somewhere in between a conversation and dialogic exchange. So it's very beautiful. And I think the host, Oron McIntyre, has done an excellent job in providing the ambience that allows for this, the mood, the Stimmung. I mean, there's an intense sense of both the urgency of what's being said and the need to really hear what's being said. And also there's no sense of the participants saying, look at me, look how clever I am, or something like that, or anything of that kind. So right at the beginning, I think we lost something to the universe, but maybe it was nothing, and maybe it would have just amounted to nothing. But just as the discussion was about to commence, this sort of incipient or still going on energies having their little aurora in the mind of the expectation of the listeners. Nick Land breaks in, preventing his own suggestion that Dugin should have the first word, and makes this qualification and says, I don't want to, I guess, sorry, I kind of stated that poorly, is first he suggests, let's have Dugin answer the question, is liberalism bad simpliciter? Say, is it bad simply without further ado, or without any further stipulations or qualifications? But then he suddenly adds this qualification himself. He intervenes, like the host is about to ask Dugin to commence, and then he intervenes. He says, oh wait, but I mean liberalism understood as paleo-liberalism, understood as not international, but only for the British. Yeah, so we never got the answer from Dugin that we might have got otherwise if it was put directly. Possibly Dugin, already being aware of the paleo-liberalism idea, is just what the qualification says. It means it's liberalism not universal, but liberalism for the English. I mean, that's not the full sense of paleo-conservative, but just in this sense of giving Dugin a qualification so that he doesn't merely have to say, are you against liberalism in all its forms, like the thing in The Godfather. Remember, I think it's in part 2 during the baptism, when the Mo Green gets it in the eye and all this stuff, and then they're giving the Catholic thing about how one must be against the devil in sort of all his guises and all his forms, and the Trieb nach Unendlichkeit of the disjecta that the devil creates in the earth. So we get, after this, we get the answer that Dugin basically accepts this counter thrust. So I do the same thing myself, because I always think to myself, I'm a Californian, and California has a certain ethos. According to Nick Land's version, he says, I think in a kind of confusion, I'm not really at ease with it, but he says, ethos, or the ethnicity. I'm not sure if he says ethos, ethnicity, but something along those lines, and ideology and religiosity are all just names for the same thing. Of course, he would probably admit that they have been distinguished by others, but I don't know how to take that. I guess he's just saying, is he saying for him that's the way he thinks about it? I guess so. But is he also saying it's appropriate when we think about paleo liberalism rather than liberalism, in the sense of Davos, in the sense of the red line dilemma of Habermas? Should we then think about it in the light of seeing ideology and this religiosity and ethnicity all go together? Yeah, that's totally scrambled. And one of Dugin's best things is Dugin's an anthropologist, so, and in fact, it's not a point none worth sort of putting an NB besides note well that Dugin's position in anthropology is exactly the same as every anthropologist in the rich North Atlantic West elite institutions. Every single one doesn't accept the pre-Boas view or the pre-Malowowski view. None of them accept the old Fraser view. They consider Fraser to be a collector of interesting poems and beautiful incidents in the life of primitives. They don't consider him to understand what anthropology is all about, that it's about difference rather than the rising into greater civilization. How should one say that in terms of agriculture? It's like the thing is being cultivated. The cult is being furthered. The thing is being given the healthy meat that it needs, and it's growing, it's maturing, it's becoming the civilized beast. Once that's thrown out for difference rather than hierarchy, then our view of we can't keep the same view of Plato anymore, because we have to consider reason, nous, all the discussions of Socrates to be one one collective imaginary alongside others, along with the Hindu version. So, Nick Land puts forward this version, but then I think here's where I'm saying, why doesn't Dugin set his face against Nick Land in this case? Because I think I'm not really, I guess I wouldn't say it this way. I wouldn't say I'm not at ease with Land's view, because I can understand it. It's perfectly intelligible, but I just don't think it's realistic. So his view seems, so people can write in that know about Nick Land can write in and tell me what rubbish I'm saying, but the way I construct, I don't know that much about it, but the way I'm constructing it is that what he's saying, he references the Fable of the Bees, and essentially pictures a kind of Hobbitshire, where I would say the problem posed in the discussion between Glaucon and Socrates over whether we want the phlegmatic, or as it were, phlegmatic means something else now, but the inflamed city, which they also call the fevered city, or also the obese city, or whether one wants the city of pigs, as it's sort of ironically called by Glaucon, which is sort of in its high form would be the Spartan city, where you just have exactly what you need, and you are very disciplined and so on. You have that sort of so-called Dorian, how does it, according to the Winkelmann anything, the Stilla Grossa, or the silent grandeur, and the what's the other part? The noble simplicity. So the ideas of a great firmness of a single idea. The sort of Kristen Stewart, sort of like a drilling into some kind of board or something, and never absolutely refusing this cyclonic sort of march down the defile of some unknown valley. There's something of that in the whole thing, but I think what Nick Land is saying on the whole is you have the private vices, public benefits version, and what this means. So, but then this is exactly in saying what this means, I think it shows really how it's impossible. So Dugin is, I mentioned parenthetically, just to cast some light on this thing, is Dugin is saying the origins of liberalism on his version are to be found in Italy and amongst the Rosicrucians, I'm not sure. But he doesn't mention the Lombards, which is curious. So I think his version should be filled out with some question of what also the influence of the Italy at a different date slightly, but which we have a great deal of history on. I think it's like 1200 or something already. These Lombards are in London, very early. And so this is clearly an Italian influence. If we go further on this side of it, we're kind of getting lost in like this David Foster Wallace stupid footnotes. I don't like David Foster Wallace. I think he's a poor writer. But if we look at it this way, then let's just look at the private vices, public benefits. So what is it? It's the idea is you're in the early part of the 18th century, okay? You're still Louis the, 15th probably or something. There's still women in London who, when they hear the mistress of Louis the 15th has been has her hair coiffed in a certain way, and that she's wearing a certain kind of hat, then the next thing you know, there's people down on Lombard Street telling the bankers, I want to take out a loan because I'm going to go buy a bunch of these hats and we're going to ship them over here and sell them like mad even. And then the idea is that not just the wealthy, but even the prostitutes will want this hat too. So that then when some of these philosophers are out like in an alleyway somewhere out in public coupling with these prostitutes, and they're, the coins are clinking in the prostitute's purse, then she's going to go out and buy these hats, and it stimulates the whole thing, the Lombardian thing. And this I would call the world system. Allow me to kind of expand on this as long as we're on it. The world system in Wallerstein's sense is sort of identical with the Davos or the Council of Basel or the Trump's attempt to, remembering that the way I interpret Trump is America first means America has 1,000 military bases all over the world. We're going to kick your ass and we're first, but you have sort of a right to try to compete with us as best as you can. That's Trump's idea. So if you have this world system in the service of the dominance entity, or what Dugin's calling the dark state. I use dominance entity to connect it up with Gramsci. But then you have something in the background which on some level you think maybe we could intervene into. And then the Hayek version, the Hayek sort of Reagan government is bad version, is Bill Buckley version, Milton Friedman version, is to say that the government is one thing, and that's what we can control with politics, but then to try to appeal to say, oh, can't you change something in the world system? That's out of bounds. We're only supposed to talk about the government, the explicit government, but not about the deep state, not about the, or even worse, the dark state, not about this thing that creates the world system, and which is trying to spread into China, India, and Russia, and which Wallerstein himself is sort of kind of mixed up about, but he points it out, and then sort of his total opposite in thinking, Kissinger accepts it totally. So that proves that the strength of the idea, I think, in some way. You have this world system which stems from that private vices, public benefits, or from that beautiful individualist notion that Nick Land is putting forward, saying, all unseen, the bees make each their own little honeycomb cell, but an infinite combination, Burkean infinite combination, forms out of this individualist, selfish, small goal, passionate energy, which otherwise would have gone, which is energy comparable to the energy that buys that couples with the prostitute out in the alleyway, in public sight. And this, again, I'm saying this is sort of like a solution that's supposed to be placed between the 2 points of the feverish city and the swine city, the lazy city. But I think I don't see how you could just have the Hobbit village that he pictures, or like Peter O'Toole said in Lawrence of Arabia, when the Bedouin guy says, is England a desert country? And then he said, no, it's a fat country, fat people. So how could you have this fat person, paleoliberalism, without the rigor that makes it into the so-called fascism, or the demand that the world system always be fed? It seems like it leads. I don't see what the point of it is without connecting it up to commercial life. So I think this is probably, maybe Dugin should set his face against that in a way, but this is a very polite conversation, and it's sort of a meeting, a coming together of the mind, so they don't do that. And then this very interesting and very, in that same light, I would say, well, let me mention something Dugin said that struck me, is that he said individualism we should make as the opposite, or almost the opposite, of personality. So that's and I think I don't think Nick Land really picked up on this, or that he's really receptive to this issue, but it's extremely important, I think. This would, the individual, then we could think of in all kinds of ways, like basically in physical, scientific ways, and set that against the other individual, so in one version, the individual would be Christ. That's the one individual which all the other personalities are somehow subordinate to. I would say something like the way is, if you think of Jacques Derrida, and then you think, how much personal dignity does this man have? How much verted U-umlaut-R-T-E does he have? Specifically human dignity. And then you would compare it to, say, Matthew McConaughey, or even Shia LaBeouf, which is sort of close because he seems very dedicated to what he's doing and so on. Mel Gibson, and say that guy in that movie that Dylan Meyer likes to, what is it, the Sandra Bullock movie about the practical magic, I think it's called. But think of all of those individuals, and as we use the word, but then subordinated under the personality that has greater dignity, which would be Derrida. And clearly, for the human being, this one of those personalities has a greater ultimate dignity. And this is what it means to speak of the personality. And this is what it means to say. So then Dugin's saying Christ is this personality, and this is the opposite of what we mean by individuality, which of course then comes in all kinds of different forms. So that's a point that's well worth meditating on. It's a good inceptive point. And then let me see, there's this comment, the Faustian comment, I think is very worth looking at. There's a line written down where Faustus Mephistopheles, what are you? And he says this, ein Teil von jener Kraft, die stets das Böse will und stets das Gute schafft. So a piece of that craft or power, a piece of that craft or power that is always, it wants or wills evil, the private vices, but it always ends out by bringing good, the public benefit. So this is an exacting, but in the regular version, that's what's so terrifying. In the Goethean version, this sort of mephitic or miasmic soot around the fact that suddenly we're allowed to say that the devil are evil. So Dugin says this is already in part of agnosticism, the tradition, and suddenly casting Mephistopheles as the lead liberal, as the full lead liberal in this sense, the one who most says, I mean, the way that links up, I guess, to analytic philosophy is sort of like if you at the outset say, we're not going to take the sort of Sesame Street view that, say greed, for instance. Greed is bad. Don't be like Oscar the Grouch. Don't hoard all your cookies or whatever. Greed is bad, and other things are bad that are taught to small children that are bad. Say no, these are just scientific facts. We're just going to look at them, and there exist among the people these different, they used to be called passions, let's call them emotions, because they're not actually to be understood as passions anymore. Emotions are just things that drive the human body through sort of some kind of conditioning or response. And then so gradually we get this change in the whole view of things into analytic philosophy, right, which then is the most dominant way of thinking amongst Americans. And it doesn't require a high educational attainment. It only requires the 6th, 7th grade or something. By then you'll have inculcated this thoroughly, or it will have been inculcated in you. So taken that way, we could see that this form of this sense of liberalism also, it's in a way, I think it happens at the same time. So it's then you have this question of, can Nick Land sort of disregarding the historical circumstances invent this new so-called hyperstition for paleo liberalism. And I guess I would just say I think it's unproved, and there's a lot of objections which seem to sort of point to him picturing in a sentimental sort of way this Shire of the hobbits, and the sort of somehow the happy median between the city where you had no luxury and the city where you were just always in some kind of mentally ill mania to make the next to direct money to the next venture, and then he just sort of dreams it up in this J.R.R. Tolkien version, and it's, oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about, hyperstition for that. And then he seems to throw in a Platonic lie by which, oh, that's okay that it's not, we don't really believe that, because it's just the apophantic or supposedly cathedral, which is open and just giving us something not really believed in. So he gives a kind of Zizek type of, as it were, ideology as against aesthetics version or something. Like you put on the glasses and then the aesthetics go away, and then you see the actual ideology. In that movie, I think, is it called They Live or something, or by the same director? Yeah, so I guess I'll end it that way. I see a lot more problems with the Nick Land position here, but Dugin is sort of acceding to these things, and I don't know how much we could really hold him to that. Also, what he mentioned, that's the other subject, but I'm not going to handle that now because it's too long-winded. The other really interesting thing to me that he brought up was the question that Dugin sort of touched on, which I guess actually maybe I shouldn't even begin to speak about it because it's kind of complicated to get into. But there's a few other questions that I do want to go into in what Dugin touched on in those first 49 minutes, but of which, yeah, it would be too much to go into it just now. So on the whole, I think it was a very fruitful discussion, and it's well worth listening and re-listening.